Have you ever been one of those people when someone said to you, let me tell you about the warfare? No, I don't want to know anything about that warfare. I don't want to know anything about the devil. I don't want anything to do with him. And I don't want to be in warfare. Don't teach me anything. Well, beloved, you need to listen, because you don't need to be afraid. If you understand what the Word of God has to say about the devil and his angels, then you'll know how to stand firm and not give in. Sometimes I have to admit, I just get tickled at people. I get tickled at people that don't want to know anything about warfare and don't want to hear anything about warfare, do not want to talk about the devil as if it would make him disappear. Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of an ostrich with his head in the sand, thinking no one can see him when you've got that great big fluffy bottom up there. I mean, sky high, so that everybody can see that ostrich. But he doesn't think anybody can see him because he can't see anybody. He's got his head in the sand. When you don't want to know about Satan, when you don't, and I'm talking about from a biblical perspective, when you don't want to understand anything about spiritual warfare because you think it's going to keep you from being in warfare, darling or sir, you just got your fluffy bottom in the air and your head in the sand. Get it out. Let's pop it out and let's see. You know, when you look at an ostrich and you see those great big eyes, and you see, it kind of makes me envious at times because of those long eyelashes. I did a makeup check before we did this program, and I went in and I looked and I thought, you can't see my eyelashes. You can't see my eyelashes because there aren't many there. But this is, on radio, you can't see my eyelashes, can you? So it really doesn't matter. On radio, imagine me with gorgeous eyelashes. All right, so when you listen to me on radio, do that. Now, let's go back to the seriousness of Daniel chapter 10. We get an insight into spiritual warfare in Daniel chapter 10, as I told you in our last program, that we don't get anywhere else. We find out that Daniel gets a message. He's mourning. He's seeking God for 3 weeks. He's in this partial fast. He's not putting any aftershave on, no ointment on his body, no creams or anything. And he is just earnestly seeking God. The minute he starts seeking God and saying, I want to understand that vision, I want to understand what that message, what you're telling me, then he, after 3 weeks, has this vision. He has a vision of a man standing before him in this glorious appearance, so glorious that it causes him just to lose the blood, just drains out of him. He's flat on his face. He finally gets to his hands and knees, and this man says, "O Daniel, man of high esteem, man precious to God, man valued very highly by God, get on your feet. I have come to give you understanding." I started, but the day that your message was, your cry, your call, your prayer was heard in heaven, I was sent, but I couldn't get here. For 3 weeks, I couldn't get here. Why couldn't he get here? Well, let's go back and read it. He says in verse 13, let me read verse 12. Then he said to me, do not be afraid, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart on understanding. Now, understanding is a key word in this chapter, and so you want to mark it. Do not be afraid, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart on understanding this and on humbling yourself. What was Daniel doing? He was humbling himself before God. That's why he was fasting. That's, when you put fasting and fasting God's way, not man's way, not fasting to be seen, not fasting because everybody else is on a 30-day fast or a 10-day fast or, unless it's a corporate fast. If it's a corporate fast, that's another thing. But fasting because you're seeking God, not just going without food and going about business as usual and thinking this is great, in 30 days or whatever, I'm going to lose a lot of weight. Listen, many times people that fast that long really do not lose weight. As a matter of fact, they gain it as a result of changing their metabolism. I'm talking about a fast where you're seeking God. This was a man who was mourning for these 3 weeks and humbling himself before God. He says, your words were heard, and I have come in response to your words. Listen now, this is exciting. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia was withstanding me for 21 days. All right, now what have you learned? You always look and you see the who. So here's a prince. He's a ruler. He's of the kingdom of Persia, and he was withstanding this man for how long? 21 days. Then behold, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I had been left there with the king of Persia. Now, what he has just told us is Michael is a chief prince, and this other prince of the kingdom of Persia had been withstanding this man with this dressed in beryl and all of that, had been withstanding him so he couldn't get to Daniel. But then Michael, a chief prince. So what you see is you see a hierarchy here. Michael, the chief priest, came to help me. Now I'm gonna read on, then we're gonna come back. So hang in there. For I had been left there with the kings of Persia. Now I have come to give you understanding of what will happen to your people in the latter days. So once again, it's Daniel's people. I put a Star of David over your people, because what you need to see is this vision pertains to the Jews. It does not pertain to the Gentiles. It pertains to the Jews. So to your people in the latter days. So now he has said when this vision is going to happen. This vision is for the latter days, or the end of the days. Now, the end of the days does not mean, hey, it ended and tomorrow there's a new beginning, or it ended and it's it's finished. It doesn't mean that. It means during this period of the end of the days. For the vision pertains to days yet future. Yet future from what? Yet future from the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia. Now, this is the most awesome, incredible vision that we're going to see, but it's going to take us a few days to get there, so hang in there. Verse 15, and when he had spoken to me, according to these words, I turned my face toward the ground and became speechless. And behold, one who resembled a human being was touching my lips. So this person that he saw was like a man. All right, he was touching my lips. Then I opened my mouth and spoke and said to him who was standing before me, "O my Lord, O my Lord, as a result of the vision, anguish has come upon me, and I have retained no strength." This is troubling. This is, remember, we saw in chapter 10, verse 1, it was a message of great conflict. He said, verse 17, and it's still a quote, "For how can a servant of my Lord talk with such as my Lord?" In other words, how can I, your servant, talk to you this way? So here he is, in a sense, bowing himself, just speechless before this angelic being. He says, "As for me, there remains just now no strength in me, nor has any breath been left in me." Then this one with the human appearance touched me again and strengthened me. He was wiped out until all of a sudden that angelic being reached down and touched him. And when he did, all of a sudden, he was no longer, just as weak and laid out and prostrate before him. But here he was now, invigorated. Here he was strengthened. And he said to me, "O man of high esteem," I love it. "O man of high esteem, do not be afraid. Peace be with you, and take courage, and be courageous." Now, as soon as he spoke with me, I received strength and said, "May my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me." Then he said, "Do you understand why I came to you? Do you know?" The word understand it means to know. Do you really know why I came to you? And once again, you would hit understand, because it's a knowledge. Do you have the information? "But I shall now return." Now watch, this is very important. "To fight against the prince of Persia. So I am going forth, and behold, the prince of Greece is about to come." Now watch. He's trying to get to Daniel. He tries for 3 weeks. He can't do it because the prince from the kingdom of Persia is stopping him until Michael, a chief prince, comes along, and then finally he gets there. So he's giving Daniel this strength, this wisdom, this understanding of this vision, and then he's taking off again. And where is he going? He's going to fight with the king, with the prince of Persia. And then he says, "So I am going forth, and behold, the prince of Greece is about to come." So what is happening? All right, you have God's people being ruled, and you need to understand this. You have God's people being ruled over by the Medo-Persian Empire. God's people being ruled over by the Medo-Persian Empire. Cyrus was a king that was chosen by God. And I'll look at that a little bit later, because I want you to see it and I want you to understand it. But he was chosen by God. He was named by God before he was ever born. And he was chosen by God to send the children of Israel from Babylon back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. And yet, in the heavenlies, there is a warfare that is going on in these principalities and powers and spiritual rulers and wickedness in high places. And you and I are going to look at it, and we're going to learn, and you don't have to be afraid.
We spent 3.5 hours in the Word today, and it flew by, because we're doing so much in observing so many different parts of the text. It changed my life and helped me own my faith instead of depending on people for my faith. So I would strongly encourage anybody who's even considering it or has thought about it, please come, because it'll change your life.
Go to precept.org/bootcamp to register today.
If somebody asks a question about anything, all we have to do is sit down with our Bibles and start looking maybe for some keywords, and we can only come to the conclusions that are right there. Our opinions outside of that aren't as important. Like, if me and Scripture disagree, I change, because there's so many misconceptions that I can have that aren't in Scripture. And it has helped me to know how to not just look at a verse by itself, but to look at the context to help me understand the meaning, or to ask the 5 W's and H's as I'm going along, and just like, who is the audience that this author is talking about? Who is the author? Like knowing those things and knowing the historical background can really give you a lot of insight into what's going on in that book. I think that's really important to know, and without having learned how to study, I would be lost.
Discover truth for yourself through the Precept Inductive Bible Study Method. Visit preceptsforlife.com or call 1-800-763-1990.
with the studies that I've done in the past, it's only read this section of the Bible and here's a question or two about it, or what do you think about it, or whatever. It doesn't matter what I think about it. It's what God meant and what God said.
Discover truth for yourself through the Precept Inductive Bible Study Method. Visit preceptsforlife.com or call 1-800-763-1990.
I'm so proud of you for coming back after that break. I'm so proud of you for wanting to know the truth, because you see, it's truth that sets us free. It's truth that liberates us from fear. I mean, the enemy's not going to go away because we don't believe in him. He's not going to go away because we don't acknowledge him. He's not going to stop his warfare because we hide our head in the sand. But when you and I understand, when we understand that that's the trick, the method of, or the device of Satan, then it's not, then we don't have to fear. I remember one day I was sitting on a couch and I was talking to this woman about Jesus Christ, and she had come out of quite a background, and like me, but in a sense not like me, and in the exposure to Ouija boards and stuff like that, you know, and tarot cards and things. And we were sitting there and we were talking, and she wanted to receive Christ, and she wanted me to pray with her. And so I was sitting there and I was praying with her, and I finished praying, and so she was praying, and I said, now you tell God, you tell him in your own words. And I had my eyes closed. She was sitting there and I wasn't seeing what was going on, except I waited and I waited, and I didn't hear anything. So I opened my eyes. You know, you can pray with your eyes wide open anyway. But I opened my eyes and I looked at her, and she was sitting there and she was going, and she had her mouth open, and she was trying, she was jerking, she was trying to speak, and nothing was happening. Nothing was coming out. And I looked at her and I put my arm around her. And then she looked at me and she said, I can't pray. And I said, honey, that's all right. It's just the enemy. Just a minute. And so I stood in the authority of Christ against the enemy, and then she was able to pray. It's just the devil. See, it's not that you disrespect him, because you don't disrespect him, and you're not to bring a rallying judgment against him according to Jude. But it's that you understand him, and when you understand him and you understand that's the enemy, and you understand then how you stand against the enemy, how you resist the enemy, as Ephesians 6 tells us, then you do what you know to do. But if you got your head buried in the sand and your bottom up like that ostrich, and you're just a target for the enemy, and you think you're going to be all right, no, you're not. No, you're not. And you think he's not going to trouble you if you don't trouble him. Listen, you and I are to be on the front lines. What did God tell through that angelic being? What did God tell Daniel? He told him to be strong. He told him to be courageous. And you and I are to be strong, and you and I are to be courageous. And where the battle's raging, we're to be on the front lines. On the front lines, on our knees, on the front lines, standing in the full armor of God. So you need to know. Well, now let's go on, because before the break, I stopped at verse 21. I want to show you how important it is to observe the text carefully, because as we look at the enemy, I want you to get the full picture here. Okay, so this angelic being with this human appearance has spoken to Daniel. He has strengthened Daniel, and he says to them in verse 20, let's review because it's good. Do you understand why I came to you? But I shall now return to fight against the prince of Persia. So I am going forth, and behold, the prince of Greece is about to come. He says, however, I will tell you what is inscribed in the writing of truth. Yet there is no one else who stands firmly with me against these forces. Against what forces? Catch it. Against Persia and against Greece. There is no one who stands firmly with me except Michael, your prince. Ooh, Michael, your prince. We've just seen that Michael's a chief prince. Now we see that Michael is Daniel's prince. Who is Daniel? What is Daniel? Daniel's a Jew. So Michael, and if you don't pick it up now, you'll pick it up in Daniel chapter 12, but I want us to go there. In Daniel chapter 12, verse 1, it says, "Now at that time, Michael, the great prince who stands guard over the sons of your people." What is Michael's job? Michael, this chief prince, the Jews get a chief prince. Michael, the chief prince, is to stand guard over the Jews. So when he's standing guard over the Jews, he knows here is Daniel, a Jew, seeking God, mourning in this partial fast for 3 weeks, and this messenger from God cannot get to him because you have these angelic beings, this angelic host that are over Persia, resisting Daniel, resisting that man from getting to Daniel and giving him the understanding of the vision until Michael, the chief prince, comes along. And when Michael, the chief prince, comes along, that's it. He gets through. He gets through, and then, because there's a war in the heavenlies, he goes back to fight the king, the prince of Persia and the prince of Greece. Now, look at Daniel 11 again, and look at verse 1. "And in the first year of Darius the Mede, I arose to be an encouragement and a protection for him." Now remember, when we're studying the Bible inductively, and that's what Precepts for Life is all about, to teach you, to assist you in discovering truth for yourself. That's what it means. That's what the word inductive means. It simply means that you're not going to rely on just the teachings of other people, but you're going to learn to study for yourself so that you can be called man of high esteem, woman of high esteem, teen of high esteem. So you look at the chapter 11, verse 1, "In the first year of Darius the Mede, I arose to be an encouragement and a protection for him." I who? Well, if you're just reading along and you only study the Bible chapter by chapter and you don't follow the flow, then what happens is you think, oh, that's Daniel. "In the first year of Darius the Mede, I arose to be an encouragement and protection for him." It's just your natural inclination if you don't study the text and study the context. No, it's a chapter division. You say, well, why did they divide it there? That's my question. Why did they divide it there? Because it's not a logical division for the sake of understanding that we have chapters and we have verses so that we can find our way around the Bible. And so I can tell you, look at chapter 11, verse 1, or look at chapter 10, verse 9, or whatever. So it's easier to find, but why the person who divided the Bible into chapters did it here, I don't know. But we know that Daniel's having his vision when? In the 3rd year of Cyrus, the king of Persia. What the angel is telling us, this angelic being, this one with the appearance of a man, that's very interesting, because you never see gorgeous blonde females with wings on their back in the Bible. It's an invention of an artist that we've picked up. And these cute little cherubs that we think of as these cute little babies, a cherub doesn't even look like that. A cherub, they really aren't very attractive. A cherub isn't as we see them in the Bible. I mean, they're not like a cute, fat little dumpling baby that you want to just kiss all over its little body, and it has cute little wings, and you think, why can't my child be an angel like this? No, it's not there. It's man's impression. So when you go back, this angelic being with this appearance of a man is telling Daniel, I've got to go fight the king, the prince of Greece. Now he's talking about the angelic prince. And he says, no one stands firmly with me against these forces except Michael, your prince. And in the first year of Darius the Mede, I, this angelic being, arose to be an encouragement and a protection to him. Now what have you just found out? You have just found out that there are good angelic forces and bad angelic forces. You say it doesn't say bad. No, but they're bad because they're keeping this angelic being from doing the work of God, from doing the will of God, or he's hindering him, he doesn't keep him. So you see a heavenly conflict. So you see a heavenly conflict between good and bad. And yet what do you know from Daniel chapter 4? 34 and 35. God does according to his will among the inhabitants of earth and among the inhabitants of heaven. So there are inhabitants of heaven. It's not just clouds and blue sky, beloved. There's a throne up there. There's whole angelic hosts. There are good angels and there are bad angels. So God does according to his will in the army of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. The army of heaven. I quoted it wrong in Daniel 4. It is army. So what does an army imply? An army implies that they are defenders. And what was this angel doing? He arose to be an encouragement and a protection for him. For whom? For Darius the Mede, an earthly man. Oh, do you realize that Hebrews, and you can go to it after the program and look at the last verse in Hebrews chapter 1 or 2. Hebrews chapter 1 or 2, let me think. And when you get there, you will find out, you might have to read both the chapters, which will be good for you, because it's always good to read the Word of God. But when you get there, what you're going to find out, all of a sudden I had, what do they call a senior moment? It's Hebrews chapter 2, verse 16. And you will find that he is the God, it's Hebrews chapter 1, verse 14. Hebrews 1, verse 14, they are ministering servants sent out to minister salvation to us, to watch over us. And in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 16, he lets you know that you're better than the angels. We'll continue this in our next program.
Thank you for watching today. All the programs you see on Precepts for Life are available on CD and DVD. To order your copy of today's program, log on to our website at preceptsforlife.com. To download your free copy of the study guide or to find out more about Precept Ministries International, click on our website or call us today at 1-800-763-1990. Join us for our next program as Kay shares more Precepts for Life.